this year is that around May 2021, we start asking people to nominate and be part of a nomination process, nominating old rodents who are really amazing human beings in society, in their professional capacity, and who really deserve to be listened to. And this is why we exactly invite them over to come through. You'll see with the beginning videos that we started with, you can even see more of the distinguished alumni dating back from 2005. Our list even includes 2019 and of course the latest 2021. We've definitely had an amazing series so far. It's a beautiful conversation that started sometime last year because we still wanted to communicate with the amazing Rhodes alumni. And of course, with the pandemic taking place, it really did cut down how we exactly interact. But one of the things that we did come up with Rhodes University are these particular conversations that say that regardless how socially distant we must be, we definitely can still continue to have a virtual conversation. So we've had amazing alumni from last year's Professor Robert Morale. If you definitely gave a listen, and of course, Brian O'Shea was also there talking amazing things about disability, equality, and human rights. This 2021 cohort, we kicked off our 21 virtual series with newly appointed Financial Sector Conduct Authority Commissioner Unathi Kamlana. If you were not there for this discussion, listen. All I can advise you is to please go to the Rhodes University's YouTube channel. You'll be able to catch all those amazing conversations and absolutely more. You can really catch up and empower yourself and take some agency from the amazing knowledge that's shared within here. So I can see now we almost 5:30, which means that I have to officially kick off this series. Welcome to everyone who is just joined us. Welcome, welcome, and I hope you're ready for an amazing hour of an empowering and enriching conversation. Good evening and good afternoon from all corners of the globe. Thank you for honoring this time and this moment. If you're new to the series, these are leadership conversations where we celebrate 2021 Distinguished Alumni Award recipients, honoring and acknowledging the embodiments of the university's motto called Where Leaders Learn. This week, which is why I'm sure most of you are joining us from your different pockets of homes, is our second installment of the conversation. This time around, we're going to be talking and celebrating Mr. Bernard Agulhas, who is on the topic of the future of audit. And I simply can't wait to kick off that conversation with you. And who is going to be helping us navigate this conversation is, of course, Rhodes University's very own Professor Dave Sewry, who will be telling us a bit more and navigating this conversation. If you are not too sure who the professor is, well, he's the Dean of Commerce, the best person to be able to navigate this quite delicate topic that, of course, affects us all. He's also the professor of the Department of Information System. He's going to be sharing much more. And of course, he has his own history at Rhodes University, from his BSc Honours, MSc, all the way to his PhD in 1994. And of course, he's also had a lot of professional experience that eventually led him back to academia. And he's been the dean since 2011 now. So I'm super excited to see what is happening in his brain and how much can we really get to tackle this issue. So I'm super excited to have Professor Dave Sewry accompanying us throughout this conversation. And I'm so super excited. For everyone at home, just to give you an idea of what exactly to expect on the order of proceedings of today, we're going to expect a reading of the citation by Azara Kasim, who's going to tell us more about our guest for today and all the successful and amazing things he's been able to do. And then, of course, as always, we welcome Dr. Sizwe Mabizela, who's going to be giving us the congratulatory speech, the ululations of this particular gentleman that we're interviewing today. And of course, Professor Dave, who's going to be telling us why today's topic is particularly important, especially as the Dean of the Commerce faculty, and why it's so crucial that we all have a listen to. And he's going to touch on some of the points, the discussion points that we'll be chatting to. So before I officially start the proceedings, I just wanted to give an acknowledgement, give a shout out to everyone that is coming through today, our special guests. We're starting with the Rhodes University Chancellor, members of the University Council, members of the Board of Governors, and the executive management of the university. And of course, on behalf of our guest, we'd also like to extend an extended welcome and special acknowledgement to a former Auditor General, Terence Nombembe, Wiseman Mkulu, the very first Black Chartered Accountant, Ms. Renee Kanosi, former chairman of the IRBA, the Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors, and of course, Suresh Khanna, the trustee of International Financial Reporting Standards Council. So super excited that all of you could join us for today's discussion. I won't keep you any longer. I'll definitely pass on the baton to, of course, the reading of the citation. I'd like to please welcome Ms. Zahara Kasim, who will tell us a bit more about our amazing guests and why we all deserve to listen to today's conversation. It's over to you and welcome.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Ntobeko, and a very good afternoon to Vice Chancellor Dr. Sizwe Mabuzele, Dean of Commerce Professor Sewry, Bernard Agulhas, and the distinguished guests joining us this afternoon. I've known Bernard all my life, and it's not only a great privilege to read this citation today, but the acknowledgement of his achievements is also a moment of great pride for my family and our community. For those who don't know, he's my big brother. Growing up in Gelvandale, Gqeberha, he was always my role model, an independent thinker. He never allowed boundaries to prevent him from achieving his goals, and he overcame obstacles with perseverance and integrity. He always set high standards, and when it came to choosing university, that standard was Rhodes University. As he and our parents could not envisage a career in art, one of his other passions, he decided to pursue his love of accounting. Bernard maintains this balance between his left and right brain by meditating daily, and he's also a siddha, meaning that he's accomplished a certain degree of spiritual enlightenment. It is at this prestigious institution that Bernard commenced his career as a chartered accountant when he enrolled in 1981 to study commerce. I followed in his footsteps, and the standard of education which we received at Rhodes not only set the bar for our careers, but at a time when our country was on the brink of a new democracy, it provided new opportunities and opened new doors for us. Our communities need role models, and leaders like Bernard are living proof that you can achieve your goals with hard work, commitment, and integrity. That is why he was the first person I thought of when I saw the invitation to nominate an alumni, and why he is a worthy recipient of this award. He not only dedicated his career to elevate the profession in South Africa to a global level, but he's always made time to mentor young people in the profession to share his passion for audit with the next generation of auditors. From 1983 to 95, Bernard lectured and tutored part-time for various educational institutions, including Rhodes University, Wits University, and the University of Transkei, and continues to mentor aspirant professionals in and outside of the accountancy profession. His early career started when he joined one of the big four audit and accounting firms in Gqeberha after graduation to complete his articles of clerkship, and later transferred to the former Transkei and eventually to Gauteng to expand his experience and outlook. The tenure of more than 30 years in the auditing and accounting profession equipped him well in obtaining experience in leadership and technical ability in the fields of audit, accounting, ethics, and governance, as well as regulation, a journey which culminated in him being appointed as the CEO at the audit regulator from 2008 to 2020. His journey with the Auditor General, where he was responsible for harmonizing and implementing the private sector auditing standards in the public sector, and also participated in the development of the Public Finance Management Act, equipped him well to better understand the public sector environment, and also led to his next position as Project Director Technical at the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, where he was responsible for the public sector of the local profession. Prior to becoming Chief Executive Officer, Bernard was the Technical Director at IRBA, largely responsible for audit and ethics standard setting for the auditing profession, adoption and implementation of the international standards on auditing in South Africa, and participation in the international standard setting activities of the International Federation of Accountants, IFAC. He's always been of the firm belief that South Africa should be a globally respected player if it was going to participate in international activities involving the accounting and auditing profession. Under his leadership in the 11 years as CEO of IRBA, South Africa was ranked in the #1 position globally by the World Economic Forum for its auditing and reporting standards for 7 consecutive years. His position as principal spokesperson for the IRBA and the public persona he developed through numerous interviews on radio, television, and in the printed media enabled him to create a platform for ensuring that IRBA's mission to protect the financial interests of the South African public and international investors was consistently held top of mind. To this end, he introduced mandatory audit firm rotation to strengthen auditor independence in South Africa. And during April 2021, the President signed into legislation the amendments to the audit legislation, which included proposals to strengthen the independence and oversight of the audit regulator, as well as introduce stricter sanctions for auditors. Until 2020, he was a board member of the IFAC International Accounting Education Standards Board and chairman of the Professional Skepticism Behavioral Competency Task Force. And he was also a founding member of the International Forum of Independent Audit Regulators, IFIAR, which consists of over 50 jurisdictions worldwide. And he was also appointed to its first board and as the first chairman of the IFIAR Audit Committee. He also chaired IFIAR's technical working group for 4 years. Bernard always believed that his international experience and opportunities should also benefit his home continent, and became a founding member and deputy chairman of the African Forum of Independent Audit and Accounting Regulators, AFIAR. Bernard is also a member of the King Committee on Corporate Governance and chaired its subcommittee on climate change. Since leaving the IRBA at the end of June 2020, at the end of his last CEO contract, Bernard was designated by Deputy Chief Justice Zondo to assist the Commission in the performance of its functions based on his knowledge and experience in auditing and accounting. He currently chairs the examination board of the South African Institute of Government Auditors, and he's a board member and chair of the audit committee of the Field Band Foundation, a non-profit organization which empowers the youth through music to become ready for their future careers. Bernard's mission has always been along the following lines. If we can ensure the highest audit quality and the right auditor behavior, such as independence and ethics, users of auditors' reports can rely on the auditor's opinion on a set of financial statements. This does not only contribute to users basing their economic decisions on sound information and opinions, but also identifies potential business failures at an early stage, which often comes at a cost of billions of rands to the public. Confidence and trust, which emanate from reliable information, will go a long way towards securing efficient financial markets, a robust economy, and ultimately the protection of the public, investors, and pensioners. I thank you. Over to you, Gqeberha.
Thank you so much, Zara, for the reading of the citation as well as the nomination. You did a great one. Thank you so much for that. And now I'm going to call on Dr. Sizwe Mabizela, who's going to give us the congratulatory speech. Dr.
Thank you very much, Gqeberha. Family, friends and colleagues of Mr. Agulhas, Rhodes University alumni, who are joining us virtually from all corners of the globe, fellow South Africans, Rhodes University leadership, staff, and students, and of course, our distinguished alumnus, Mr. Bernard Agulhas. Rhodes University honors and celebrates its alumni who have achieved distinction in their chosen field and have demonstrated exceptional leadership and dedicated service to their profession and humankind through the award of the Distinguished Alumni Award. The award acknowledges the recipient as an outstanding role model for our current and future generations of Rhodes University students. The recipient should personify the attributes and values of social justice, empathy, kindness, decency, integrity, honesty, compassion, civility, and human solidarity. These are the attributes and values that Rhodes University seeks to inculcate in its students. This evening, we are singularly honored to recognize and celebrate one of our own, Mr. Bernard Agulhas, as a worthy recipient of the Rhodes University Distinguished Alumni Award. On behalf of our council, our chancellor, and the entire Rhodes University family, I extend our heartfelt congratulations to you, Mr. Agulhas, on your well-deserved recognition by your alma mater with the Rhodes University Distinguished Alumni Award. As your alma mater, we salute you, we honor you, we celebrate you, and we commend you for all that you are and for your exceptional contribution to your profession and to our nation. Bernard, we would like you, your family, your colleagues, and the whole world to know just how incredibly proud we are of you and your personal accomplishments, and how deeply honored we are to count you among our most distinguished alumni. And thank you for flying the flag of our university with great honor and with great distinction. And of course, you are a wonderful person for us to celebrate, and we are really proud of all your achievements. Once more, hearty congratulations, Bernard. I thank you.
Sibonge kakhulu. Thank you so much, Dr. Sizwe Mabizela. I'm sure everyone at home is clapping along. This is where we insert the claps. Believe me, we'll improve our systems in a bit so we can hear each other clapping. Thank you so much, Dr. Mabizela, for that beautiful one. I hope, Bernard, you received that all and well, and I hope it's gearing up for the conversation that's about to come. So thank you for that. I'm now going to call on Professor Dave Sewry, who's going to tell us more about our topic for today, the future of audit. What are our points of discussion, and what exactly is his passion leading us to discuss? I know he's very passionate about this field, so I'm quite excited to hear the conversation between the two. So, Professor, the future of audit. Why is this crucial? Why are we listening to you, not just as students, but also as the world at large? Please break it down for us.
Thank you, Nontombeko. I'm certainly entirely enthusiastic about this topic, and I'm looking forward to the conversation with Bernard. But I do want to add my congratulations in the first instance. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. From those sitting on the edge of their seats here on campus in Makanda, to those throughout the world who've joined us for the conversation this evening. As Dean of the Faculty of Commerce, may I extend warm congratulations to Bernard on his Distinguished Alumni Award. Since graduation, Bernard has achieved much in his career, and faculty basks in the reflected glory of one of its own. I guess it's every educator's wish to see their graduates go on, not only to have enjoyable careers, but also to contribute to the discipline and the profession in the manner that Bernard has. As part of this conversation, Bernard will reflect on his time at Rhodes University and will be joined by his peers of the day, who will also, no doubt, recall with equal clarity particular lecturers, examinations in Great Hall, events and experiences that shaped his and their future. And I need to confirm and certainly give the assurance that many years later, students of the faculty graduate with similar bags full of memorable experiences. Of course, some 35 years on, both the university and faculty is unsurprisingly very different, and in some ways, comfortingly the same. As examples, the university has well nigh doubled in overall enrollment, but still retains a distinctive personal touch. Faculty continues to hold proud the well-renowned BCom CA degree, but other degrees flourish. The new Barrett Lecture Theatre Complex 1 and 2 each seat 400 students, but our small group tutorials remain at 12 to 15 students. Our residence system has grown significantly. Petratif has been joined by many, many other residences. But each residence is still home to 70-odd students from throughout the country and Africa who learn from each other and with whom lasting friendships are made. And true to form, lecturers have shown no appetite whatsoever to tolerate late arrivals in lectures, and as a matter of course, still require students to answer questions and to give their views and opinions during class, especially if they're sitting at the back of the lecture theatre. It's a special trick. At Rhodes University, the Faculty of Commerce provides the foundation for careers in commerce, more specifically careers as chartered accountants. Each of our graduates enters the profession at the so-called bottom of the ladder. However, honing daily the leadership skills initially gained as students, they rise in prominence, influence, and impact. All lecturers cherish the joy of seeing their students graduate, but they gain true and ongoing sustenance from seeing their graduates becoming leaders, making a difference in the profession, and in all likelihood, adding to the body of knowledge that surrounds, informs, and progresses the discipline. And faculty's active participation in conversations like today with Bernard demonstrate commitment to the well-known cycle of student to graduate, to professional, to leader, to influencer, to contributor, to educator, and back to student as one learns from the next generation. Finally, and once again, Bernard, accolades from me personally and faculty. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Professor, for that amazing speech right there to Bernard. Bernard, I hope you're listening, and I hope you're lucky actually this is being recorded, so at least you'll get to follow through and listen afterwards. So I'm about to invite Bernard over for this particular conversation, but you will know that as it was read in the citation, that he's been an audit regulator for the past 11 years or so, and also in the auditing profession overall in 30 years. But before all of that, we have to rewind back in 1981. You decide to come to Rhodes, 1981, yes. You decide to come to Rhodes and enroll for a commerce degree. But tell us about your time at Rhodes, and what are some of the personal reflections that come to mind as we kick off this conversation, Bernard, if you could please just join us.
Thank you, Ntobeko. Good evening, everyone. And good evening, Vice Chancellor Dr. Mabizela, Dean of Commerce, Professor Sewry, Madam Chair, and distinguished guests. Thank you to Zara for the nomination and for reading the citation. Thank you also to the university for bestowing this prestigious award on me, and also recognizing their alumni for their contributions to society. Contribution to society must be the ultimate responsibility of any graduate. And it's great and wonderful that the university recognizes those contributions in their alumni. 1981 was the defining year for Rhodes University, because it was roundabout then that the university opened its campuses and residences, not the campus, the residences on campus to all races. So needless to say, there were quite a few tensions during that time, especially in the early 1980s. But certainly at the same time, I was very grateful that opportunities were provided to us to be exposed to wider cultures, to different cultures, to diverse cultures that would stand us in very good stead after 1994. Like for many students from Rhodes University, it also provided me with lifelong friendships, as the professor was saying. I don't think I'm the only one that believe that we've made lifelong friendships at Rhodes University. But it certainly, 30 years on, I can still pick up the phone and stay in touch with a lot of my colleagues today that studied with me more than 30 years ago at Rhodes University. It is where I met a lot of my good friends, but it's also, in fact, where I met my best friend, who has been married to my sister Zara now for almost 30 years. And of course, another accolade for Rhodes University, they obviously met at Rhodes on campus as well. Outside of my career, family comes first. And my two nephews, as most of my my family and friends and colleagues know, my two nephews and my niece remain my biggest joy. And unfortunately, they did not study at Rhodes University due to us relocating to Gauteng. But I know that with the 9 awards in matric, and the boys both being medical practitioners, medical doctors, now practicing in the Cape and Gqeberha, I know that they've already started to pay forward to our communities where we came from. We grew up in an environment where we were pushed hard, but we also had the necessary support from our parents. And similarly, at the schools, we went to public schools. And at those schools, our educators also continued to push us very hard, but also gave us the support. And later on in my presentation, in my interview, I will also, under one of the topics, come back to the impact that your environment has on your behavior. And I certainly believe that it's not only in your personal life that the environment can influence how we grow up, how we are raised, but also in the working and professional environment, it will determine what qualities those professionals will eventually demonstrate. While some may consider being competitive and ambitious advice, I translate that into being driven and not being complacent. Unfortunately, a lot of our society and a lot of our communities become complacent and accept things for what they are. While upbringing and schooling and studying at university like Rhodes must necessarily influence our futures and our careers, I also believe that it is the opportunities that are presented to us that add that final ingredient for success. I believe that by grabbing those opportunities with both hands, we can achieve even higher goals. And with additional ingredients like mentorships, resilience, perseverance, and a positive attitude, I believe that anything is possible. Finally, just to come back to some of the comments that the professor made about our lecturers. Yes, it's quite a while since I've heard the word Great Hall, but it brings back memories and stress. It was still a good experience. But I also remember my lecturers and thank my lecturers for getting me to this position I am today. And it's very interesting that after I left university and became more involved in the profession, that I met up again with my lecturers when they applied to be on the committees of the institutions where I worked. Of course, I accepted them with open arms. The second thing I wanted to mention was that a few years ago, the family took the children to Rhodes University so that we could show them where we studied, what a good environment it was, and where their parents met. And I must say that although Prof says that everything looked the same, to us everything looked much smaller. And it's not because the university or the buildings are smaller, it's just that we are such different people today. We are much older, we are hopefully more wise. And it was just interesting to see how different university looked to us. But other than that, I believe that a lot of things have stayed the same. And I thank the university again for this honor that they bestowed. Thank you, Dr. Becker.
Subtly different conditions, though.
Nanto, you are on mute.
Thank you, Doctor. Of course, some things stay the same, it's more that they change. So I'm just going to invite the professor, just for the interest of time. We've all received some of the discussion points that we're going to be taking place for today, such as where we come from, a question of trust, remaining relevant in a dynamic environment, and protectors of the public interest. So Professor, if you could just please quickly join us and we can just watch our time and you can just pace us through these discussion topics. And of course, I'll also be manning some of the comments that will be coming through on the side to see what are some of the questions and some of the congratulatory messages coming through. I can see some already coming through thick and fast on the side. But Professor, without any further ado, I'm just going to allow you to kick us off so that we can really just get in the thick of things for so long.
Thank you, Ntobeko. The first topic that Bernard and I would like to apply our minds to is the profession of accounting, auditing, and its various activities are not a latter-day new incantation. It has a history. It comes down not over the last 10 years, it comes down hundreds of years. Bernard, where did it all start?
Dave, thank you very much. And I think it's very important to go back because the question is often asked, how relevant are auditors and accountants today and how relevant they will be in the future? But taking us back a couple of years, first of all, we'll see how the profession has survived so many changes, so many revolutions, to ensure that the fourth industrial revolution could easily be overcome by the profession as well. Auditors and audits, as well as accountants, will remain relevant because of two main things, in my opinion. The first is that auditors are protectors of the public. And public protection is exactly what we need, what our country needs, what our people need at the moment. And therefore, as long as auditors can show that they protect the public, they will remain relevant. Similarly, auditors sell confidence, they sell trust. These are human traits, and you will need humans. This human element cannot be eliminated. For that reason, I believe that auditors and accountants will remain relevant. Going back 7,000 years with the Mesopotamians and the Babylonians, when double entry bookkeeping started, when the division came between ownership and management, then it became important to also hold the one had to hold the other accountable. And again, accountability is a very important concept in today's world because we've seen in the private and public sectors how accountability has been flaunted. Now, as I mentioned earlier, with us surviving 3 industrial revolutions, there's no reason why audits and accountants cannot survive this revolution as well, the 4th industrial revolution. And the only difference is that they have to be a lot more agile to respond to the fast-changing environment, as well as demonstrate a different skill set. Therefore, this is one of the responses that we have to have as the profession. Respond to the 4th industrial revolution, but at the same time, we also need to respond to the negative reputation that we come from in the last couple of years. And that has been caused by many, there's many reasons for that. And I won't go into too much detail on that because we have been working on trying to get through those root causes and trying to restore the confidence in the profession again. But at the same time, I'd like to say that the 4th industrial revolution and the fact that we are now working with a lot more technology should be embraced by the profession. And we should look at the advantages rather than challenges that it poses to us. At the same time, what I feel very passionate about is that behavioral competencies are as important as our technical competencies. Universities, our examinations, our work, our place of work will prepare us to have the necessary technical competencies, but things like independence, things like ethics, all those skills that are more behavioral, to be skeptical, to be questioning, to have critical thinking, those will become more important as we move from a situation where we try to restore confidence in the profession again, but also to be able to adapt to the current environment in which auditors and accountants will find themselves. Similarly, our standard setters internationally have had to respond to the changes. The competence requirements for audit and accountants have changed. The auditing standards have changed. For example, how we identify risk during an audit, and also the assurance that the public is expecting from auditors have changed, because we are no longer looking at historical information. We are also looking at forward-looking information and aspects such as ESG, or the environment, sustainability, and governance, and climate change, and those issues will also need different forms of assurance. So the idea is to be adaptable, to be agile, and therefore where we came from certainly must influence where we are going. And just to end off from where we're coming from, a quote from one of the business coaches that I've been following, Stephen de la Cruz, is that we might not be able to respond to every aspect of our lives, but as long as we take responsibility for where we come from, for the mistakes that we made, the lessons learned, and have a vision, we can move forward.
Bernard, the old adage, the more things change, the more they stay the same. If my mind wanders back to the 15th century and Luca Pacioli, who's reputed to have been the first person to materially document the double accounting system, a trial balance, assets, equities, liabilities, what's remained exactly the same, and what has been the key aspect of the change? In short, what stayed the same? What's changed dramatically since the 15th century documentation?
Thanks, Dave. Accountants still have to prepare financial statements and records, so double entry haven't changed. It's just the way that it's being prepared, and the closest to double entry and the changes that have been caused by technology is blockchain. That is how a general ledger is being built. So the way that it's done has changed, but the fact that there has to be double entry and that accountants will still have to be held accountable, that hasn't changed. And therefore, yes, the basics have stayed the same. It's just the way that we arrive at the end product has changed.
Thank you. Nontombeko, do we have any questions from our followers at the moment?
Well, certainly, definitely more questions, but a whole lot of congratulations also coming through. Wiseman Nkulu saying, congratulations, Bernard. Well, Akile Masuku saying, wow, Bernard, I didn't know the side about you. Congratulations for this well-deserved honor and award. You're shining light in the profession, and you've been honored to have served. I'm honored to have served with you at IRBA in reclaiming the dignity of the public trust in auditors. Sorry, certainly some good words being shared there, and a whole lot more coming through saying they are so proud of you. And of course, another one from the family saying congratulations to my brother-in-law. So I see your family there coming through in the actual audience. So thank you so much. It's so good to hear about some of the changes, but it'll be interesting to see how some of these changes come back to affect society as this conversation goes further and further, because at the end of the day, as much as we let the accountants do the number churning and the work, it comes back to bite the people in the public as well, and we'll be able to see how exactly are things faring off as we go. So Professor, if you could perhaps kick off the next part of the segment, and perhaps let's touch into the auditor's trust and the impact of society, or perhaps restoring confidence, as what Bernard has already touched on briefly.
Certainly. Professionals all sell something. The fishmonger sells fish. The carpenter sells beautiful wooden pieces. The medical profession sell healthcare. What do auditors sell? And you've mentioned the word trust. Has that been eroded? How do we restore it, Bernard?
Thank you, Professor. Yes, I think that every professional, every graduate, not only auditors and accountants, sell trust and confidence, because the public relies on their skills and their competencies and their ethical behavior to serve them. And what has been eroded is not, there are many reasons, as I mentioned, root causes for the erosion of trust in the auditing profession. And I wouldn't go into that list. But certainly what has been eroded is the fact that the public has lost trust in auditors because of auditors' behavior, not because auditors are no longer technically competent, but because they have started to behave in a way that doesn't fit people or professionals of their stature, especially in the areas of integrity, of ethics, of being independent, which is one of the cornerstones of our profession. I also believe that professionals, and especially auditors, had forgotten that their main responsibility is towards the public protectors. Any person that call themselves a professional has to protect the public. Whether you're a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant, you are there to protect the public. And unfortunately, our profession had somehow forgotten that that is their main responsibility, because during the last few years, what I refer to as commercialism has started to become more important to our professionals than professionalism. And therefore, they had forgotten the root competencies, behavioral competencies that we were taught at university. And because of behaviors, the public had started to lose confidence in the product that has been delivered by our auditors and accountants, because you can be as competent as anyone else. But as long as you're not independent, you're not skeptical, you don't have a critical mind, you don't ask the right questions, then the public won't trust what's used by auditors. And let me just add lastly that we must remember that it's not only auditors that are part of the financial reporting chain. There are audit committees, there are boards, there are management, there's parliament in the public sector who must hold people accountable. And these qualities apply to all of these role players, not just to auditors and accountants.
Yeah, certainly. And I think from an education and a university perspective, it's our role not only to impart technical competencies to our students and then obviously to our graduates, but also to instill in them the very essence of the ethical behavior required of a professional like an auditor. And not to be dragged into a technical morass, but rather to stand back with your technical and your intellectual knowledge and to apply your mind, as you say, those very emotive words, being alert, being skeptical, being thorough, which is difficult to teach. You inculcate that in your young professionals, something that we would start. We would hopefully hone on campus in our courses, but that would be grown and nurtured within the professional firms. And for them never to forget that they owe allegiance to their profession. The allegiance is to the profession, then it is to their firm, then it is to the client. But the allegiance is to the profession, so that we can earn the trust that the public so earnestly desires within us. Could we just sort of tarry just a little bit on those non-technical competencies and those behaviors that are sometimes difficult to convey, an ethical stance, for example? How would we go about that?
Well, Dave, as I mentioned earlier, in our personal lives, it's very important in what environment we are brought up, whether it's our school, whether it's our home, and what culture and qualities are inculcated at that stage. However, the question is often asked, how can you teach somebody ethics or certain behaviors when they get to university or when they get to their work environment? And I've gone back to done some research on this when I was on the International Education Standards Board, and we looked at behavioral competencies. I looked at something called the Halston model, which was a military model. And quite just briefly, what it says is that a person's behavior is made up or is a function of two, there are two parts to a person's behavior, two influences or factors that can determine how somebody behaves. The first is the organism itself will, of course, need to display certain behaviors, but that organism is also influenced quite largely by the environment. And therefore, it's a function of both of those factors, not just one. And if you take that through to university level, going to university where the university and departments like our accountancy and auditing departments start to set the example, create an environment for those students to behave ethically, to have integrity, to be independent, have critical minds, ask the right questions, then obviously they will start behaving in that way, even if the organism hadn't been raised like that. And if they start behaving like that at university level, it will be so much easier to behave like that in the professional world and be able to deliver the service and display the competencies, behavioral and technical, that the public expects from them to deliver high quality service.
Yeah. And this is certainly something that is a highlight of the 2025 competency framework that SAICA has issued. And one of the biggest features is the balance of the integration of the technical and the non-technical competencies that are so absolutely vital in the modern field of auditing. Gqeberha, have we any questions?
Oh, certainly, of course. I think with this kind of topic, how lack of independence, poor accountability, and culture of silence are some of the issues plaguing the auditing profession globally. Some people saying that the public interest issue, which harms, this is a public interest issue, which harms citizens fundamentally, whether it's corporations, defrauding shareholders, or it's municipalities and its citizens. And of course, people bringing to mind VBS, Mutual Bank, all of those coming into the topic, but specifically looking at some of the questions that we have here. Uzongezile Baloyi says that, dear Mr. Agulhas, congratulations once more. In the face of the recent involvement of auditors in the state capture and other corporate scandals, how do we restore the profession's accountability and public trust? Of course, you've touched on that, but I just want to link that question to another from Matthew, who's writing and saying, I'm not necessarily an accountant, but it strikes me, looking back at the KPMG scandals with state capture, etc., that it's not just a loss of confidence in auditing firms and the problem of losing independence by incorporating consultancy with audits, but it's also the actual profession. Sanctioned members, how many disgraced auditors were able to resign and start work within the profession again? And how can the profession regain credibility? Again, this question coming up that is needed by society and investors. And I know that's a bit of a mouthful for you, Bernard, but hopefully if you can touch on something there that would call on people specifically round about the question of how do we bounce back from this? How do we gain some sort of certainty within the profession? So if you could touch on this, and then perhaps, Professor, we can go on to the next segment as well.
Right. Thank you, Ntobeko. The first step that's important is to, as I mentioned earlier, and I refer to the quote from Stephen de la Cruz, which said that before we can actually take control of our future, we must look at our past. And when we do that, first of all, we must take responsibility, we must have a vision, and we must learn from the lessons. And during my time at the IRBA, the most challenging part was that it was to get the profession to take responsibility. And once they take that responsibility, they'll be ready to move on. But we can't just take responsibility for the past. We also have to have a vision for the future. And we do that from the lessons that we've learned. And therefore, what was important was to look at the root cause analysis, do a root cause analysis of what had brought us into where we are. And I think the loss of confidence had been caused by many things. I'd like to mention a few because it's important that we know what those root causes were before we could actually develop solutions to that. First of all is that we live in an environment, not only in South Africa, but globally, of a lot of corruption. We must also recognize that these failures are not just failures in auditing, it's systemic failures. There's a problem in the system. It starts to fail from the point where the accountants produce information for management, management reports to the audit committees, the audit committees report to the boards, etc. That's where it starts. And the failure didn't happen in one part of the financial reporting chain only, it happened in the whole system. So we have to recognize that there were systemic failures. We must also recognize, and one of my favorites is that our auditors don't exercise professional skepticism like they should. Questioning, ask the right questions. And not only the auditors, but also those charged with governance, the audit committees, they're not holding the management to account. And the board is not holding the management to account either. They also need to be critical, ask the right questions, and above all, they need to be independent. if any of the auditors, accountants, audit committees are not independent and have an independent mind, then they become too close to the people that they work with. So that has also been a big contribution that had a lot to do with the situation that we found ourselves in. We also have a loss of, as I mentioned earlier, the profession had started to focus more on making profits and not focus on being professional and providing a service to the public. We had forgotten that we are there to serve the public. And so therefore we also need to look at that. And consequences also need to be more severe. I think Gqeberha mentioned that one of the questions were, why are the fines so low? Why aren't auditors being held to account or accountants being held to account? And also, I think somebody asked a question about the current audit models. The fact that auditors perform services which are, some of it is in terms of responding to what the public wants, and others is performing a service to management. This is the current audit model that we refer to, where audit firms are providing both services, services to their client, management services and other services, as well as the audit. But it's almost like serving two gods. The audit that they provide is serving public. The other services serve the management. And that brings the auditor into a conflicting situation. So we certainly have to look at those audit models and the way that audit firms are structured. In respect of holding audits accountability, Zara mentioned that during my last 3 months at the IRBA, we introduced changes to the legislation, the audit legislation, which moved the maximum fine for auditors for any finding against an auditor from 200,000 Rand for finding to a maximum to be determined by the Minister of Finance, which makes it much greater. And you don't want to regulate and have oversight over a profession by having punitive measures, but at least that might help to change their behaviors as well. And as far as the fact that these failures have occurred throughout the financial reporting chain, we have also started a process to introduce something called comprehensive regulation, where it's not only the auditors that are regulated, but that all those other role players are also regulated. And these are only some of the initiatives that I believe can contribute towards changing, giving them the confidence that the public wants in the profession, bringing things back to where it was. But it starts off by us first recognizing that we have to take responsibility for what happened, that we have a vision to change it, and that we learn from our lessons in the past.
Yes, and I think, Bernard, it would also be true to say that institutions of higher learning also need to play their role in creating the auditor of the future. And I can think of a couple of things. The first of which is to awaken our students' thoughts to the fact and to the gravitas of their decision to follow a career as an auditor, as a chartered accountant. It is a big decision. You have a role to play in society. And in addition to that, for the behavioral patterns that are inculcated, tolerated, and expected in an educational mold to fit that, to approach everything that we do in a professional way. Our interactions with our students, our expectations of them as they study, as they submit work, as we congratulate and celebrate as well. That's the role that they certainly need to take. Just very briefly before we move on to just two things. Mandatory audit rotation that's starting in 23, and maybe a word or two on joint audits as a mechanism to instill greater trust.
Dave, the introduction of mandatory audit firm rotation was specifically to respond to the concern that we had around the independence of auditors. When we did some research, and I'll give a very simple example, and you find that auditors have been auditing the same huge clients for over 100 years. And when you take into account the fees earned from those audits, and I'm talking about hundreds of millions of rands per annum, then it becomes very difficult. Well, the situation is created where it becomes difficult for the auditor to not try and disappoint the client or to upset the client, and to get very close to the client. And it was very important to start again separating the role of the auditor, which has to be independent, from the client that they audit. They could not become cozy. And although some auditors are obviously independent in their mind and in the way they do things, we got to a situation and found that in investigating the reasons for the failures, that there certainly had been a lack of independence, which was clearly demonstrated by the length of tenure that the auditors had, and combine that with the fees that they earned, very difficult for them to rotate off their clients. And it became necessary for the oversight body to then introduce measures, legislate measures, to make sure that that happens. So after 10 years, for certain entities, if the audit has been for 10 years, then please rotate off and give somebody else an opportunity. That also came together with the IRBA's concern that there was too much concentration in the market amongst the big four firms, taking on most of the clients. Give the other firms an opportunity, and at the same time also introduce transformation firms to take on these big clients. So that was about managed audit firm rotation. In respect of joint audits, South Africa had not, when I left the IRBA, and I know that the current technical director is on the call as well, we started to look at how we can introduce joint audits back into South Africa. It's been very successful in countries like France, but there are also very challenges associated therewith. And we started off doing surveys and asking those firms where it worked, where it was successful, what they've done to make it work. And provided the right measures are put in place, it can actually work. Again, it opens the markets to more than others. It also provides a second set of eyes on an audit. And these are all things that will address the current root causes of the situation that we find ourselves in.
Okay. Bernard, if there's one thing that has been able to disrupt our lives, it's been information and communication technologies, a particular area of interest of mine. But could we apply our collective minds to the influence of artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things, blockchain and machine learning, to the way in which the auditor does his or her work? And if there's time, the impact that that's having on what we teach our students and our aspirant auditors, disruptive technologies. How's it going to treat us?
Thanks, Dave. At the beginning, I was talking about the fact that this is another revolution to which we need to respond. All it means is that we need to be more agile in responding to it. And a concept that I loved using when I was on the International Education Standards Board was something called timeless skills, which means that what we teach students and what universities should teach students shouldn't necessarily change because of the way that we do things or the way that the environment in which they perform their services change. That can change, but it doesn't take away things like, and I keep on coming back to the critical thinking, the analytical thinking. We need to inculcate that into our youth, our students, our young professionals. That still has to be there. And the Internet of Things, the artificial intelligence are just ways to make things easier, to provide a lot of information of which auditors can take advantage. They should use that to their advantage and become competitive by becoming involved in artificial intelligence, using blockchain, extracting data differently, using the Internet of Things to mechanize ordinary assets, etc. If they start, they have to embrace those changes, but it doesn't mean that they no longer have to provide assurance on what the public needs assurance on. And it's just that they need to use what is at their what is available to them, still provide that end product, that assurance, that confidence, that trust, that a set of financial statements can be trusted, and that investment decisions can be made based on those financial statements. So yes, it will certainly influence the way things are done. Just very briefly, from an education perspective, again, when we on the international board, we looked at very specific things. And when I go through these items, you'll see that these are not new things and it's not difficult things. And we identified 5 elements that has to change in the digital environment. The first one is business acumen. That's not something new. The only difference now is that audits and accountants need to be familiar with the new technologies so that they can understand the business that they are auditing, they're working in a lot better. We've talked a lot about behavioral competence. The fact that we are working in a digital environment just means that auditors and accountants need to be more curious. They have to think more critically, and they have to embrace lifelong learning because things change all the time. And it also requires as a behavior that they must have a strong sense of self and situational awareness. The third one is digital acumen. Of course, if you don't understand how these technologies affect what you do, it will be very difficult for you to be able to work in that environment. So that is a very important part. Fourthly, data interrogation, synthesis, and analysis means that they can now use structured and unstructured data so that they can come up with trends and identify exceptions. So it's just, again, using available big data and using it to their advantage. And finally, another skill is communication, which means that they must be able to communicate the results of the work that they've done. These are not new skills. They are timeless skills. They are just applied in a very different, in a very new environment.
And certainly, like any other tool, it has to be in the hands of somebody called the auditor in this particular case. Nontombeko, any questions?
Definitely do have questions for you, and some of in an audit, and you'll forgive us if you have to repeat some of those answers that you've shared as people join us along the conversation. You'll be able to recap here and there, but talking to the implications of public losing trust in audit extending further than the audit industry, especially in the wake of several high-profile collapses. There are questions coming through talking to, as an auditor, how does especially for those that are more reliant on less tech, mostly creating around the issues of cryptocurrencies being utilized as financial assets for financing companies. Another one coming through from Charles saying, is MAFR really going to do anything for audit quality? And is there any empirical evidence that supports this? So those two questions coming through, and maybe towards later, I'll just sum up some of the messages as well as the rest of the questions in our next segment before we wrap up.
Bernard.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'll try and remember all those questions. Let me start off with the last one, fresh in my mind, the mandatory audit firm rotation. Again, because I believe that independence is such an important ingredient of a high quality audit, by forcing audit firms, and it's not the auditor, but the audit firm to rotate, it will ensure that that distance between the client and the auditor is maintained. Yes, we have empirical evidence. I think the IRBA spent about 2 to 3 years gathering evidence around it. Unfortunately, it hasn't been, a lot of the countries haven't really started with mandatory audit firm rotation because there's been a lot of resistance against it. But we have done a lot of research, and based on some of what we believe the failings were in our audits, and the fact that it's linked to independence, we thought that, and we believed that mandatory audit firm rotation will address at least the independence part of that. So yes, there was some research that was done, and I still do believe very firmly that it will strengthen auditor independence. Just another empirical figure that I'd like to use. Prof mentioned earlier that it will become effective in 2023. Before we started to look at mandatory audit firm rotation, when it came to boards and audit committees, the appointment of the auditors, very, very few audit committees voted against appointing the same auditors. After we start to educate the public and to raise the awareness about the importance of the independence of auditors, the last figure that I remember of audit committees and board members voting against appointing the same auditors was just under 50%. So that, again, to me, is not a figure that resulted in us introducing manager audit implementation, but it shows that what we have introduced is now being understood by the public, and the public is now actually doing the right thing by helping us with independence. I think one of the questions was around cryptocurrencies. Again, all these technical terms and the way that business is done. Cryptocurrencies is just another way and platform to exchange currency. It's different, new, but we used to working with platforms to exchange currencies like in the past. What is important is that auditors and accountants should familiarize themselves with how that works, so that they will still perform very similar procedures in principle, but they will just do it differently because they are dealing with a different platform. So it doesn't matter how things change, we'll still have to go back to the basics and ensure that we do what we're supposed to do, but obviously need to do it differently and educate ourselves in how these things have changed so that we can still respond to the expectation of the public to provide that assurance and confidence, the ultimate output of the audit.
Thank you, Bernard. Bernard, our final topic that we need to tackle is that of professionals as public servants and their social responsibility. How do we exemplify the very essence of being a public servant so that we can deliver on our social responsibility?
Thanks, Dave. It goes back again to what we teach our students, and one of the things that I've also emphasized while I was still at the regulator was that we need to go back to basics. And the basic learnings that we've had didn't change. I'm sure that the university still teaches students the behavioral competencies that I believe are quite important in delivering high quality audits. So we need to remind our students that when you're a professional person, there are certain expectations regarding your behavior, and that we are not professionals, or we don't graduate so that we can earn a lot of money. It's great that we do in the instances where there's high salaries attached to this. We should also stop linking rewards to money, to income, to revenue of a company, whether it's an audit firm or a company, but start rewarding our professionals for demonstrating the right behaviors. And if we start reminding our students that they are professionals because they are there to serve the public, that is the one main thing that had been forgotten. They are there to serve the public, and in serving the public, they have a social responsibility, and that social compact requires and demands from them to behave in a certain way. The public's not interested in their competencies because they believe that our universities produce candidates with the right technical competencies. They are interested in their behaviors and the fact that they understand and appreciate that their first responsibility is towards the public. They have to serve the public. But again, it's something that we need to start inculcating at the university level. And I'm glad that it was mentioned earlier that quite a few students from the university, Rhodes University itself, from the accounting department has joined, because I'm sure that Prof, you and everybody gives them this message, but I would like to remind them also that they are public servants. They are going out as public protectors. They are there to protect the public. And once they remember that and they live by that rule, and our leaders demonstrate that is expected of them, then I believe that we will start seeing a change in the profession, and the new aspirant accountants and auditors coming through will start hopefully demonstrating those kind of behaviors.
Excellent. Nontobeko, back to you for the last time.
Definitely. I don't want to leave Ukuselo out of this conversation. He's had auditor use data analytics tool and data visualization in order to provide 100% assurance rather than providing an audit opinion-based sample? Will this require IAASB and auditors to provide an absolute assurance instead of reasonable assurance? Secondly, with the advancements in technology, as an auditor of the future, should they consider cyber won't mandatory audits firm rotations encourage audit to wrap up the congratulations, but in terms of our questions, that's it from there. If there are any left over from the audience, we'll just include them in one of our blog sites on our www.ru.ac website. But those are the ones that have come through now. And again, apologies if we have to repeat some of the things that we've said here and there, but you understand that people are coming through thick and fast as the conversation goes. So it's over to the both of you again, gentlemen.
Bernard.
Thanks, Dave. I'm not Gqeberha, you broke up quite a lot, so I didn't hear the full question, but I'll try and respond to what I think I've heard. The first one is regarding the 100% testing and the fact that auditors might be expected to provide more than just an opinion, but complete assurance on any set of financial statements. First of all, we must keep in mind that the future of audit also includes the fact that auditors will be providing assurance on different sets of information, non-financial information like ESG, and then environmental, sustainability, etc. They'll be providing information on things that are not necessarily numbers. The fact that artificial intelligence can be used to extract 100% samples, great. But again, it just helps auditors to be able to deliver on their mandate by having access to big data, by being able to extract all this information, not necessarily having to provide or to extract a sample only. This doesn't necessarily mean that the auditor is now in a position to certify the financial statements, because there are a lot of other aspects that come into the audit, a lot of things that the auditor doesn't know. And also, the auditor, I keep on coming back to behavioral competencies. The auditor can extract 100% of statistics and information. It doesn't mean that the auditor still has to apply his or her mind to that information. And once you start applying your mind, and you need to critically evaluate that information, whether it's 100% or 20%, still means that you are not in a position to provide certification on anything, that you will still only be able to provide assurance. However, the audit standard setters, I've talked a little bit about the new competency set by the education standard setters, but the audit standard setters certainly are looking at how artificial intelligence and technological changes affect standards. And when I look at one of the standards, I'll just give one example, the standards that says that auditors have to identify risk before they do an audit, ISO 315. All it says now is that the risks will be different. Auditors must identify different risks, but they'll still perform a risk-based audit. And once there's risk involved, it means that the auditor also incurs the risk of expressing the wrong opinion. So those risks will always be there. And therefore, I believe that the auditor will continue to provide only, not limited, but some assurance and not necessarily 100% assurance on a set of financial statements. I think I responded briefly to the cryptocurrency earlier. I heard that again. But again, it's just a different platform on which to exchange currency. It's not necessarily something new that the auditor needs to it's not something new that's introduced into the audit environment. Gqeberha, those are the two things that I've heard. I'm not sure if there's anything else that I missed.
No, you've handled on the mark. I think the rest will definitely put up on our website just for the interest of time as well of the questions. I don't think we'll have much complaints.
I wonder if I can respond as well. I think we should never lose sight of the fact that technology, whether the technology is able to do 100% sample, fairly exotic AI, It is not going to replace the auditor. It's going to empower the auditor. The auditor still needs to apply his or her mind to each and every situation and to apply the mind critically. That is vitally important, and to be alert at the time that they're dealing and using all of the tools, and not to be dazzled by any of the technology. I'm not dazzled, and I would encourage auditors not to be dazzled either. Use the technology. Nontombeko.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this beautiful and amazing conversation, Prof. And it's so amazing to know that I definitely have a broadcast co-host now, Professor. I hope this is not just the first and the last gig. I'm taking you along for the ride on this one. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time, and as well as for you, Bernard. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And of course, hearty congratulations and sending ululations all your way. And of course, your family, Bernard, you've got a whole entourage, don't you? We've got John coming through saying, well done, Bernie. We are proud of you, from your nephew, John. And of course, I remember you did a shout out there as well. So a lot of congratulations coming through. Robert Morel also coming through saying congratulations. He was our 2020 distinguished alumni winner as well, saying congratulations. Uzanele and I saying, well done on a sterling contribution to the audit profession and to SA citizens. You have left an incredible, incredible mark. A lot more questions coming through saying that thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations are in order from SAIGA Saga, and we are privileged to be working with you currently. So Bernard, a whole lot of congratulations coming through, and a lot of people saying that they're absolutely proud to have worked with you as you provide many turnarounds and many changes within the profession and the industry. And many more young ones hoping to still work with you. I don't know how. Hopefully you won't be retiring anytime soon. But a lot of young people also coming through. Of course, the Rhodes students showing themselves and their mark loud and proud. So thank you, every single person that was part of our conversation. We absolutely appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time and the honor to be with us right now. If you missed part of our conversation, you can check it out on our YouTube channel at the Rhodes University's YouTube channel, and as well as checking it out on www.ru.ac.za, where you can read out more about our distinguished alumni and some of the amazing achievements that they've done. Bernard, I don't know if you have any last words that you'd like to leave us with. We don't know when we'll catch you again, maybe in an article, maybe a newspaper, maybe on an online interview, we don't know, but please leave us with some of your last words as we bid farewell.
Thank you, Nontombeko. Firstly, thank you again to the university, to the dean, to the VC, to the committee that bestowed this award on me. It was really very humbling. Thanks, Nontombeko, for the questions and for hosting, and for everybody that facilitated this. My parting remarks will I'll just go back to some of the important points that I made during the conversation. Firstly, and most importantly, that professionals and graduates must remember that they are public servants and that they serve the public, and that applies to all of us, all professionals, not just accountants and auditors. Secondly, and this is more to the university and to the lecturers, we need to go back to basics. As Prof said, we mustn't be dazzled by the changes and by technology. We must go back to basic behaviors. The basic competencies won't change. It's just the way that it will be applied, and fact that we need to be agile to this ever-changing environment. Thirdly, we must always deliver the highest quality services and be proud of the services that we deliver. What we've seen in South Africa is that there's been a decline in the quality, not just in services to the public, municipality services and services that the communities are exposed to, but in the professional environment, people have stopped being proud of the services they deliver. Quality must be utmost in our minds when we deliver services as professionals. And then finally, independence and behaviors are just as important as technical competencies. So you need a combination of those two to be able to restore the confidence and the trust from the public in our profession again.
Thank you very much, Bernard, for your time, and congratulations. One last more. Do enjoy your 2021 reign together with your cohort. And thank you so much for the dedication that you've done in the profession, the industry, and of course, Rhodes itself. So thank you and have a good evening. To everyone at home, thank you so much. Of course, you can catch the conversation on our YouTube channel. We'll definitely save it there. And if you have or are interested in nominating any distinguished alumni, you can definitely do so. Keep them in mind for next year's nomination round. And thank you, everyone. This officially ends our virtual series, proudly brought to you by Rhodes University's Division for Communication and Advancements, fostering productive lifelong relationships with our alumni. My name is Nontobeko Khumalo, CBC, and this is where I bid you farewell and enjoy your evening. I'll see you next time as we continue this amazing series of leadership conversations. And who knows, we could be talking to you next. But until then, keep nominating and make sure you make our alumni are proud. I see Dr. Mabizela is coming through. Do you want to say something, Professor? Do you want to say something? Happy belated birthday.
Well done. Well done,
so
well done to the team. We are super proud of you all. And congratulations again to Benny. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to everyone at home in the different corners of the world. Do enjoy your evening and your afternoon, wherever you are. And goodbye, everyone. Bye.